Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the creator economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Hayley Brooksbank. Hayley is a seasoned brand and marketing strategist with over 20 years experience in the professional services space. I'm really looking forward to talking with her today. Hayley, thanks a lot for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Marcus. I'm delighted to be here. It's taken a while to set this up. I think both of our diaries have been pretty full, but I'm glad we're finally talking. So thank you.
Yeah, great. And thanks again for joining us. Maybe you could take me back in terms of you've been in B2B marketing, particularly in the professional services space. But when you got into the space versus where it is today, what do you think have been the big changes that you've seen over the years?
I think when I first came into professional services, I actually came from branding consultancies. So I started my career off in branding consultancies. So when I switched to what I would have considered client side, I kind of understood the business model. I understood what it was like for people to have to actually go out there and do BD development as experts. Because in professional services, the fundamental thing is that you are selling the people, not a product. And they dabbled with productized services for a while, but didn't really go anywhere. Actually, fundamentally, what you're buying is the person. So you don't really have a sales team in B2B because, let's face it, if you're talking to somebody like a lawyer, you quickly want to get past the salesperson and actually talk to the person who's going to be helping you with your problem, same with an accountant or a management consultancy. So you don't have that sort of sales marketing relationship. You're marketing and you are BD. And marketing has traditionally in professional services always taken very much a backseat. It's very much it serves up to the experts, to the partners, to the lawyers. They say jump, we say how high, and it's very subservient. And I think that's the biggest change that's happened in the last 10 and maybe even 7 years is professional services and B2B are noticing and realizing that marketing is actually a discipline and we're getting more respect. And along with that, they're getting the idea of brand. And I think that's the fundamental change, coming in and saying, we can help you sell, we can help you with this process. We're not just the people in the background doing the proposal and the bid deck and servicing it up to you. We're actually partnering with you. And that's, I think, a big shift.
Yeah. I think even with the B2B Institute and LinkedIn, they do these forward-looking pieces of research every year or so. And one of the big themes is kind of now how not just professional services, but other sectors as well in B2B space of how they're kind of more focused now on kind of the long-term brand building piece rather than just looking at like kind of the short-term lead generation. And it's easier for finance and reporting, I suppose, to be able to do on a lead generation base, but you're really kind of going after just the people that are in market at that given time rather than actually the future cash flows and the brand building piece. But I'd be interested to hear from like professional services in your experience, how do companies kind of get it right in terms of that branding piece? Because I guess there is a lot of pressure on marketing kind of to deliver in the short term, but obviously a brand play is a more longer term thing. In your experience, how do they get it right in order to manage those expectations?
It's so tough. And one of the things I think that is improving, and it's literally probably in the last 3 or 4 years, no more than that, is that B2B marketing is getting better at lead gen. So lead gen has not been something that they've been very good at because you can't really do a lead gen campaign for when you're trying to get a lawyer in the door. It's relationship building. It's very much about support. So brand had a very big play in that. It was about saying, look, we need to build the brand. So I used to say to people, brand is basically about sort of making sure that when you knock on the door's ajar, that the client you're speaking to already knows about your organization and already knows what to expect for you and also hopefully knows what the difference is, which is very much about in sort of professional services is about culture because you don't want to be judged on price. That's the one thing, because as soon as you judge a law firm on price, they're all the same.
Yeah.
And so you have to have the culture, you have to have the areas, and of course you have to have the case files. You have to have the lawyer who's got the experience and so it's hugely sort of dependent on on the actual partner's ability and partner's experience. Obviously, no way I can possibly downplay that. But, the brand had a really big play. And I think what I noticed when I was at TTP, which is actually a product development consultancy. So it's still professional services, but they help to develop products. So what was really interesting is the marketing team we had there had quite a strong product background. Even though we weren't selling products, they brought that product marketing expertise to the table and to the campaigns that we were doing. And it was fascinating because I think the thing that we've struggled with within professional services particularly is as people realized that they needed brand and they needed marketing in order to sell, and they needed brand being out there, creating the differences, creating the USP, creating the culture piece and the standout in the market for that particular professional services. Because ultimately, you're in a weird conundrum with professional services. You need to move in herds because you need to be found in herds. But then when you're in herds, you need to be sort of standing up proud. I'm always reminded of that Far Side campaign where there's a sort of herd of cows in the field and one of them standing up. That's what you want to be. You want to be in the herd, but different. It's very hard. So as everybody started to realize branding was important and they moved into that direction, I think what's happening more recently is actually, particularly with sort of social media, is people are realizing they can take lead gen techniques and bring them across into professional services marketing and still back it up with the kind of the not having that sales team, as I spoke about, having it into the expert. And I think that's a really fascinating piece because it impacts measurement. And now what I've been saying for over a decade and a half is it's really tough to measure brand in professional services, fundamentally because they don't spend the money. It's not a B2C brand measurement. You don't have those kind of metrics. You're not doing enough brand measurement to actually measure brand impact. So you're basically going on, are you having that experience? Are you building the reputation? Does it feel like you're getting more of a standout? But it's very intuitive. It's not really, you can't put a measurement in front of board and say that's our brand measurement. Well, I was just saying you can do that more if you bring in lead gen campaign metrics. You can do that, which is really interesting. So I found myself over the last 3 or 4 years actually switching my narrative to saying we ain't going to measure brand. And I used to say to my teams, Marcus, what can't be measured, can't be judged, lean into it and enjoy.
Yeah.
There's an element of they became like, how can we measure? And I'm you're just not going to be able to measure this because you're not in that world. We're not B2C. We're not spending that kind of money. So then you're moving into that idea of actually using lead gen campaigns and their metrics. And that's really, really fascinating. And I think it's coming back in and it's strengthening brand in a way that I'm quite interested in how it's developing. I think as a professional services marketeer, I'm quite interested in how that's working.
Yeah. So from what you're saying then, they're like having the brand piece, that's actually making the lead gen part even more efficient. No, like that the brand piece is basically the memorabilia or the memory kind of test, so to say, and you're building that awareness or memory inside a potential client.
It's for long term. Yeah, so brand is there, the long-term play, like the LinkedIn's been saying for a few years now.
Yeah.
Don't go short-term, go long-term, you'll get better sales. Brand needs to be there. It can't be taken out of the equation, but it's a long-term play. But for marketing teams to show actual measurement, bringing in some lead gen tactics is actually really useful because you start to get, this is how many people opened our campaign. This is how many people responded to the email. This is how many meetings we set up, all of that stuff. And that's actually stunningly relatively new, I think, in my experience, to professional services. So that's, I think, quite a fascinating shift of bringing in lead gen techniques to help measure and develop brand. And then my other big hobby horse, which I think I was posting on recently and we were chatting about it earlier, is actually how sales happen and how brand can help sales happen with organizations. So for years, people have been saying to me, but how do you measure the impact of brand? How do you measure the impact on revenue? How do you give you ROI? And I've been saying, I can't give you ROI on professional services branding because you don't do enough, you don't spend enough, and you don't measure enough. So it's going to be really tough.
Yep.
So now, actually, what I think is shifting in my own mind is it's enabling the sales team. So I'm going into sales enablement more and saying that's actually where brand can make a bottom line difference to this organization. And the reason for that is because experts in law or accountancy or, whatever it might be, I always say you don't go to law school to get a law degree to then become a salesperson. But if you join a corporate law firm, that's your ultimate career journey. When you become a partner, you're a rainmaker.
Yeah.
And they're not naturally good at it. And one of the reasons they're not naturally good at it is because they are so good at being lawyers, accountancies, and in my firm that I was previously at, TTP, scientists and engineers. That's what they were. So they're so expert. They see the huge problematic issues in play. They say all the detail. And I used to say to people at TTP, you've got too much on the slide. And you could see the struggle they had as engineers was, but if you take a piece out, it could break. And if you take a screw out of an engine, it could break. So take the thing off the slide. You need it all on the slide. And I think what branding can do is actually help take the brand strategy methodology and say, this is how you sell.
Yep.
And this is how to do it, and to take people and to be client-centric, to be audience-centric, to take all the slides that talk. I mean, somebody said to me, I need a global creds deck. I need a global creds deck, and I need to have 5 slides to any audience talking about who the company is. And I was like, nobody wants to sit through 5 generic slides.
Yeah, for sure.
Just awful.
Yeah.
But it was a natural thing that they said, that's what we have to do. And so that's why I was sort of, this idea of actually saying, apply neurolinguistics techniques, apply good communications techniques to sales presentations, and actually help. The bottom line is the sales conversion at those meetings. Because if marketing is doing all that effort to have that meeting, and then the team screw it up because they don't know how to sell, if I can go in there with sales enablement and enable them to sell, then actually that's making a much bigger difference to the bottom line.
Definitely. How do you see it then in terms of brand then? Because definitely there's a shift in a lot of sectors, and I guess it's maybe you can tell me more, but we see it like in the last probably 3 years or so of this kind of the founder, the executive team, the partner being the face of the organization. And before that was true, like, okay, you have the partners listed on the page and so on, but now it's much more amplified in terms of they're either subject matter experts or thought leaders. And do you find in professional services that that's had like a net positive on the brand in terms of from a selling motion, or is it something that still you think has a long way to go, or how do you see that in professional services?
I think in professional services is interesting because the partners of the firm are the rainmakers.
Yeah.
They've always had to be out there. They've always had to be making relationships, and it's the strength of their relationships that bring in the work in a lot of ways. So they have been quite good at being out there and being present. And you'll see the strong and the ambitious and the successful partners are the ones who are present. But that being said, quite often the board steps back from that. And as marketing and PR teams that I've worked with, you really kind of getting the CEO of a big law firm to have a strong presence on LinkedIn is quite tricky. And I think it's because they're sort of busy, and they've probably at that point, they've stopped selling. They're now managing the business.
Yeah.
So they're like, I'm trying to manage the business here. I've got all these I've got 500, 1,300, 1,500 partners selling. Give me a break. I'm trying to do everything else. But I think trying to get them to understand that it is really important to the brand and to the culture, because that's the thing about professional services branding, which I've always found so fascinating and which keeps me in the industry and in the sector, is that the employer brand is so important because you are completely reliant on the talent of your people. So you want graduates coming out of a sort of university fighting to work for your firm, and you want newly qualified lawyers and associate partners fighting to be part of your firm because you want the cream of the cream. You want the best lawyers. So your brand and the way you represent yourself from an employer brand perspective is actually your product funnel. It's really important.
Yeah.
And so the CEO and the board can take a very strong role in that because they can show the leadership and culture of the firm. And that's what we've tended to lean on. You need to show the leadership of the firm and what this means, what the culture of this place is like.
Yeah. Do you think then, though, for instance, like you mentioned about the partners and then the board, of course, as well, but do you think from like even those that are going out and getting the business that that kind of thought leadership play. If they're experts in a certain area, whether it's litigation or whatever it may be, having that kind of online presence or subject matter experts and amplifying that more, is that a play that you see that maybe some kind of a trend in the future? Maybe it's not board led, but it's more
I
like
don't think
kind
that's
of like
board level. I think that's partner
yeah,
level. I think
yeah,
partners. I mean, I don't know whether you're aware of the T-shaped lawyer has now been replaced with the O-shaped lawyer.
okay,
Soon we'll have a B or a B-shaped lawyer. I don't know. But so the T-shaped lawyer is the idea of that you've got broad sector and then deep
sure,
skill set. So you're broad and you're deep, your T-shirt. And then the O-shaped lawyer came up in 23, 24, probably 23. And that's the idea that you surround your client. You are the sort of like the soft, fluffy donut that kind of surrounds your client. And then they play on the kind of this. Therefore, you're open and optimistic and all lots of other O words, And there's definitely these trends. And I think the O-shaped piece really makes a lot of sense
yeah,
because and I think a lot of things, and Bird and Bird, the last law firm I was at, they had a really strong approach to client services and the kind of the key clients strategy, which was about getting the partners to be confident at not hoarding. So what happens is your partner benefit, your partner bonus, and your PEP is obviously related to how much money you bring into the firm. But for a partner to be generous and hand that over to other people within the firm to deliver, it sort of goes against, someone who's been at a law firm for 20 years, that goes against the grain. You
yeah,
kind of your client and you defend it. You don't let anyone else get near it. And actually opening it out and surrounding them with other skill sets and bringing other people to bear and being more about cross-disciplinary and cross-functional and cross sort of jurisdiction, that actually strengthens the client experience and actually also strengthens your fee revenues. And that's a big transition. And I think Bird and Bird do that very well
yeah.
in actually taking the key client strategy and focusing on how do we make sure these key clients have touch points across many parts of the firm, which is also good because if somebody leaves the firm and goes somewhere else, they will take their relationships with them as much as
Yeah.
they can.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense as well from what you say, because at the end, you see this across other sectors about like customer centricity. And if you have a number of different partners that are involved with a client, it's going to give them a better service. You would imagine then you have a higher retention as well, the client. So it's really a win-win, and it's probably de-risks maybe them going somewhere else if a partner leaves.
If the partner leaves, and they're possibly more likely to stay with sort of with the law firm if they feel the team is still strong,
Yeah.
But I think it's fundamentally also about, it's not just about protection of that way. It's really about saying we can give better client service, we can give a better client experience,
Yeah.
and that's got to be a win-win. That's got to be beneficial for revenue. It's got to be beneficial for the team. It's got to be better in lots of ways. So taking it out to doing really, really good client services for in the round.
Yeah.
And not being sort of, having one key client sort of partner who is the point of entry,
Yeah.
and everything goes through them, which is the old model.
Sure.
I think shifting to a broader front, which is better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think then in the professional services like that you mentioned around how Bird and Bird approached it, but what do you think is the future then from a marketing standpoint of like how as a marketing org that can enable that even better then from a marketing standpoint of either amplifying that or even making it easier for partners to engage with their clients like that from marketing? Or what kind of trends do you see in the space that can be effective over the next number of years?
I mean, I think MarTech has obviously got a massive play,
Yeah.
and how it plays into professional services. The savvy and the on the ball law firms are already looking well into it. They're all over it, and they're getting in there, and they're getting some good MarTech to support their pipeline and everything they do. So that makes that whole piece. And I've heard of law firms now, I don't know about accountancies, but I know law firms are actually bringing in sort of head of marketing operations. They're actually, they're creating roles. They're understanding marketing operations is an issue, and you are getting more roles in marketing teams where you're getting a CMO, but you're also beginning to get a marketing COO. You're starting to get that idea of actually we need to operationalize this. So they're definitely getting much more savvy in that respect, and using all those marketing techniques to help with that. I think the fundamental difference is if we've gone from it's all about the partner, marketing as subservient, to, there's this brand thing that maybe actually it's quite useful to have a presence in in the marketplace, which is about brand, because that helps us with our talent and also helps us open the doors and helps us differentiate, to, oh, but we can't measure this brand stuff. It's really difficult, to, okay, let's do some more lead gen style campaigns and start bringing in those sort of marketing measurements and those other kind of like good practices and borrowing those, because professional services tends to be behind the curve, but it does
Yeah.
borrow from other B2C and B2B stuff. How can we do that? And then what I'm saying is, yes, that's really important, but don't forget to loop back into the sales enablement, because
Yeah.
fundamentally you've still got lawyers and they're getting more savvy because they're much more social media savvy than they used to be. But you're getting professional services experts and you're saying to them, I can help you communicate because I'm a branding person, and branding is fundamentally about communication. It's not
Yeah.
about, we've been saying for years, brand is not logo. Brand is about successful communication and bringing branding techniques into sales techniques and saying, this is how to sell at a relationship level in a way that actually enables your conversation. Because when you get in the door, you get into the door with a client to actually present to them and their team and their board. And that is an extraordinarily valuable meeting. And if you mess it up because your presentation is overly complex, overly long, overly sort of focused on your needs and not the need. I always say the best slide presentation, a sales presentation you can possibly have, is one you don't use.
Yeah. I agree.
Because you don't want to be, you want to be
No.
talking.
Yeah,
You wanna
100%.
more.
Or they're talking either.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be talking,
Yeah.
you want to be conversing, you
Yeah.
want to be having a conversation. So you're better off saying, so I say to people, develop a pre-sales deck. So the pre-meeting deck. Don't put any case studies in, put the team in, put who you are in, put that in, that's really important. Pre is really important. Then have the deck at the meeting. Top line case studies you can talk to, very low level, but ideally have 6 and then say, from what you've talked about, maybe I could take you through this particular one and skip to number 3. They get to see you've got others, but you don't talk them through. Then there's the follow-up deck, which has all the detail in it. And I think the pre-deck is something that, if you've ever brought a supplier or a third-party agency into an organization, the fear of your professional relationship, of making that introduction to your organization, it's actually quite a big
Yeah.
thing.
It's on you as well if it doesn't go the right way.
Exactly. So sending a pre-deck to say, this is who the team are, this is something that they can circulate, saying, I'm bringing these people in, this is just to give you a sense of who they are, is actually a really useful way of enabling your contact in the firm, your contact in the business, to actually help you be sold before you get in the door. And that's a really important element of it, I think, which people forget.
Yeah.
And they want one deck that does it all.
Yeah. I think that's probably a challenge even across a number of industries as well, of this, so well the product or the service, and you have a lot of these hypotheses maybe or assumptions as well. And whereas if you ask the right questions and just listen, that can be so much more valuable. The client feels heard, and then you can follow up with the features and all these things on a call. Whereas the real goal is when you're in that face-to-face meeting to kind of extract the important information.
Yeah.
And I guess it takes time it's experience that helps to do that. But it's always a challenge, I think, to get the balance right.
Absolutely, totally. And I think that's where my expertise as a brand and marketing person can come in and help and support sort of BD activities in a way that's actually about my area of expertise, but still extremely valuable. I think that's the next bit of I'm on that.
Yeah.
I'm following that through. I'm finding that interesting.
Yeah. How do you think then, if you look in professional services, like you mentioned there, which is really interesting around the MarTech piece. So it's from what I understood, you're kind of saying it's like, actually, they see that there's a big value there, because yes, you can use the technology, but then also the systems in terms of like having your pipeline and having kind of meetings and forecasting and so on. But I'd be interested to get your point of view in terms of how you see it being effective for professional services in terms of like how they plan out the year. Then do you look at like kind of, these are normally the list of accounts or companies that we want to work with, and we have like a play of like, okay, we're going to get our partners at speaking events that we know those particular companies will be present, and we're going to try and organize meetings with contacts within those companies? Or what do you see as kind of like an effective way to kind of like go about the commercial plan for the year in terms of like marketing activities normally when it comes to brand?
Well, I would say this is one of the fundamental things about professional services. So if you're going into, whether it's one of the big four or whether you're going into a big law firm or a big, sort of any of those kind of even architecture firms, when you're going into a big professional services firm, they will have people who are directly supporting BD. So you won't have a sales team. You won't have anybody on the phone.
Yeah.
You won't have people sending mass emails. More and
Yeah.
more you're getting, but they're targeted emails. What you're doing is you'll have the partners who are the experts. Then you'll have a BD person, and the BD person will be really strongly helping them prepare for pitches, do RFPs, respond, also develop thought leadership, help them sort of focus in that area. And then you'll have the marketing, which will be the marketing, the brand, the PR, the internal communications, the web team, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I personally don't want to speak for very, very, very competent BDers. They will be doing that. I'm not.
Yeah.
My experience isn't in that forecasting area.
Sure.
So I'm not going to pretend that I know about the BD process intimately enough to give people advice. I will listen to a podcast where a BD person tells me that stuff. So I think I'm not, so that idea of actually using MarTech for the sales forecasting and the positions is not an area that, what I think MarTech is actually being used for at in professional services is, you got to think that, it's a lot of companies feel they can't afford a product like Salesforce.
Yep.
So their CRM will be subliminal. It will be sort of, a bit rubbish, to be honest. So you're always dealing with a stack that doesn't talk to each other, that
Yeah.
doesn't work, that you can't get and trying to get the actual list together can take so long, and you have to get a partner to review it all, and all of that time can and then getting people back, getting the feedback in from meetings, and getting people to say, oh yes, marketing helped me, because of course they want the glory themselves, that it was
Yeah.
all of that stuff that happened for them to get into the room. When the conversion happens, that's their success.
Yeah.
Just then
That's always the challenge, isn't it?
to knock
The
it back and
BD
say, well,
and
actually,
sales.
marketing
Yeah.
got me in the room. So
Yeah.
all of trying to get those stacks talking to each other and trying to get the analysis of them is, I think, where people are getting better, and they're seeing the investments needed, and they're getting better at the investment. They're getting better at the connectivity of the stack. And then there's also things, so there's asset management stuff as well, and helping with that kind of that side of MarTech, of actually helping with how they manage all of the materials, all of the content, all of the kind of different ways of going to market, and having that available for organizations, so there's not a bottleneck of a sort of a global brand team or a global comms team stopping them there. So that is also another side. So there's the client understanding tech, and then there's the kind of operational tech of doing the business of marketing. And I think both are getting stronger, which is again interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Predictions for the future then. Where do you see in a number of years, like you mentioned about the MarTech and that as well? And I guess we've been talking for a while and we never mentioned AI, and it's probably
It's the big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose there's the obvious ones in terms of like admin and stuff on the back end, and kind of qualifying leads and nurturing in terms of like on the back end with CRMs and stuff like that. But any other things of use cases in terms of what you see that AI could help with efficiencies in professional services, B2B in particular, from what you've seen?
I think the biggest thing is that every professional services firm is using AI, and they're using AI to help with content. It's helping to assess content and review it. It's helping to scan it. It's helping to pull it together. Everybody's using Claude, ChatGPT, everyone's using Copilot, obviously, but it's not a good writer, but everybody's using AI to write. So I guess my query would be is, how many years is it until LinkedIn's just talking to itself? No, because actually, how soon will it be that actually all human participation in social media stops?
Yeah.
That's the thing I can say to, so at Wiley, so I've been working at Wiley and helping them launch their brand. And that's not professional services. That's a big global publisher. And it was the first brand guidelines I've done in, I would say, 30 years of working in branding, where the tone of voice guidelines, I developed AI prompts to say, if you want to write in the tone of voice, this is the prompt you put into Claude. To take that, what you've written, and put it into brand, because professional writers can write to tone of voice. Normal human beings can't.
Yeah.
So to say, if you're a marketing person and you want to turn that LinkedIn post or turn that article, whatever, and put it into brand tone of voice, this is the AI prompts you use. And that's the first time I've done that, but that's where it's come. And so I suppose the danger is that we just stop actually writing.
Yeah.
I think it will happen. It will take a while for it to properly happen in professional services delivery of thought leadership, because you have to have the expert view. Otherwise, it's pointless and it's empty. But I think it's getting more and more, it's coming. Thought leadership is becoming AI'd. And where is that?
Yeah. I suppose the flip side of that, of like that, the opportunity is when people see, for example, video or something that seems more authentic, that will have more of an impact, because you can spot AI posts all over LinkedIn or other platforms as well. And I think also they have it in the algorithm as well. Like those kind of posts don't get the same reach. Whereas if you have something where it's a personal point of view, or if it's in an event that you're at or something like that, that seems to get still engagement, because people could kind of see, okay, that seems like it's real, or it's not something that's. Right. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next number of years. But I agree with you. I think the AI slop, I suppose, for want of a better word, of like what a lot of people are calling it, in terms of how it's so easy to do, but it's also, you can kind of see that the authenticity, it's lacking in that kind of like and maybe with AI that will improve over time and so on. But it's definitely something that I think it's an evolving trend of how companies would remain to be authentic and kind of be somewhat different without risking the temptation of like what AI can bring. And it's incredible, the technology, but like having the balance right, I think is something that is really important.
If you take something like Power BI and say, how will AI influence Power BI? It's going to be massive, and we're going to get so many more insights, and it's going to be really interesting and great. So there's obviously some really fantastic stuff about AI. And obviously within professional services, the bread and butter of content is long form, and you can't do video in long form because nobody wants to watch it. So the concept of the white paper, there's an element of, you do actually need something relatively meaty as your foundation for 10 posts and the however many videos, but there needs to be something underneath it that actually talks about stuff and has some insight and has something new to say. And I think it's just a case of how much we stay authentic with that. And what I say to people is, look, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever AI it is you're using, you treat it like an intelligent intern. You get it to do the grunt work for you, and you get it to pull stuff together, and you get it to do some research, and then you, as the grown-up in the room, has to look at it.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It does save a lot of time, I think, for certain things on the back end, but I agree. I think just relying on that, you can see that when you try to distribute that then as well, that if people are doing that, it becomes obvious to people that the tone of voice sounds the same for everybody, and then there's no way of standing out then, or no way being differentiating yourself, which is a good thing. It makes us go back to the thing of being creative and how we can actually position ourselves and so on as brands.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting because, I think 5 years ago, nobody could talk about anything but the metaverse.
Yeah. And now nobody's talking about it at all. Yeah.
Where's the metaverse? Gone. I don't think that's going to happen quite the same way with ChatGPT. But it is interesting how we go in cycles and how we change things and how we so who knows? It's going to be an interesting 5 to 10 years, but I'm
definitely
looking forward to it.
Hayley, it was a pleasure talking with you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Really nice. Yeah.
If anyone wants to connect with you, or what platforms you normally, LinkedIn, is it, I guess?
LinkedIn's great. Yeah, I'd be very happy to link into people. Yeah, definitely. I'm sort of, I'm open to really strong and interesting conversations about sort of where we take brand next. That would be great.
Great. Hayley, thanks again for joining us. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcus, and we'll speak soon, yeah?
Thanks.
Take care.